We're going to get started. My name is Kathleen Crockett, and I'm the chair of Sustainable Seaside. Please come in. There's 4 chairs up here. There are 3 chairs. There's 2 up here. And we may need to get some more chairs. We're happy to see this big turnout and the interest in this. So I'm the chair of Sustainable Seaside. I'm a Seaside resident. I've lived in Seaside for 20 years. Welcome, everyone. Thank you. So I just want to say a bit about Sustainable Seaside if you're not familiar with us and what we do. We are a group of citizens who are we gathered together and we formed to meet the challenges of declining resources and climate change by helping Seaside and adjacent communities transition to sustainable practices. Our vision is a community in which all residents and organizations and businesses and public agencies are engaged, like we are here tonight. This is wonderful. Thank you all for coming. Engaged, empowered, and working collaboratively towards a sustainable, equitable, and resilient future. Sustainable Seaside advocates for land use policies that are environmentally stable, socially equitable, that preserve the cultural diversity and family-friendly character of the city, consistent with long-term economic vitality for Seaside. So, again, thank you for being here, city leaders, community leaders. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And I'll introduce Matt Hess. He's a Sustainable Seaside member as well. He's also a resident of Seaside, and he's all about making Seaside a better place for everyone. So I'll turn it over to Matt.
Hi everybody, my name is Matthew Hess. Can you guys hear me in the back?
Yes.
Awesome, excellent. Thank you everybody so much for coming out to this presentation. This is an idea. I think it's a really great idea for the people of Seaside, and it is my honor to present to everybody. I know that this is going to be potentially a divisive issue. I hope that everybody goes into this with an open mind and are ready for a great discussion afterwards. So basically what we're proposing is Seaside East, which Seaside is about to acquire, remain as wild as possible for the citizens of Seaside, for the community of Seaside to use so long as they see fit. And that's the basic idea of it. So here's a map of Seaside East. Seaside East, right there, and then we'll be talking a little bit about the areas highlighted in pink later on, but this is kind of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to go through. Is that okay? Can everybody see okay?
Yes. Good. Yes? No? Which is better? Halfway.
1 or 2?
Great.
All right, we're going to keep going. So this is a general map. Up here you can see the zoning. Don't worry if you can't see that. I'm going to be pointing and explaining the whole time I'm up here. We're going to go through piece by piece. We're just going to kind of get down into the details here. So first and foremost, we have it split into 3 different types of Greenbelt zones. Each one is going to provide different opportunities for the community of Seaside. First up, we have 42 acres in Seaside East and a bonus 13 acres at Main Gate that we're zoning what we call GB1 or Greenbelt 1. Those are going to be your ball fields, athletic tracks, picnic areas, basically places for us to get outside and do stuff. Sports, teams, whether that's soccer teams through the city of Seaside, baseball teams, whatever field we decide to build there. We haven't decided what goes there. That's going to be up to the city once we designate this area as this zone. So that's left open. Whatever sport is popular at the time we decide to build something up there is probably what's going to get built. On the map, that's going to be up here at the top of Hilby. Down there at the bottom. If you notice, that zone's a little bit tucked back to the west, to the east, excuse me, away from Hilby. It's going to be behind the hills, so if we do build a stadium with lights or anything like that, it's going to be a little bit more occluded from the neighbors up here. So that if we do have a nighttime soccer match, for example, they're not going to be bright lights shining into everybody's homes in the neighborhood up there. Next up, we're going to have GB2, or Greenbelt 2. So this is our second zone. We're thinking of a campground. We really think that a campground will bring in tourism and give people an opportunity to stay in the limits of Seaside in a different way than a hotel or an Airbnb, for example. With Fort Ord being there, if you take a lap around Fort Ord, go to any entrance on any of the other three sides, north side, east side, or south side, it's hard to find a parking spot. Who's gone camping in California? It's a difficult thing to do. Campgrounds are in very high demand. We think that by building a campground here and providing that opportunity to people to camp and visit Fort Ord as well as Seaside, it's going to bring in basically as many campsites as we can put in there. Whether that's going to be small tent campsites or RV campsites, again, we're leaving that open. It's really going to be what the people of Seaside want from that area, but we're designating this a place to bring in tourism and bring in visitors. And it's 33.8 acres. This is going to be out by Eucalyptus Road. So it's that area out there. As you know, we already have a road that goes out there. So if we're going to build this up for RVs, if we're going to build this up for campsites, we already have a way for folks to get out there and do a little bit of car camping or whatever they want to do. Finally, we have the big one, the third designation, Greenbelt 3 or GB3. This is what we're thinking as more natural outdoor recreation. So going on hikes, going on bike rides. The Fort Ord Recreational Trail and Greenway will be going through the backside of there. And it's going to be a great access point for Fort Ord National Monument. It's hopefully going to bring people into the seaside side of Fort Ord National Monument. As I mentioned, other three sides seem to be incredibly busy, but it can be very difficult to access Fort Ord National Monument right now from Seaside. Really the only place to do it is Eucalyptus. And even on any given day, you can see plenty of cars parked up at Eucalyptus because everybody wants to go to Fort Ord National Monument. What I hope is that by designating this Greenbelt area as a place for the community of Seaside and visitors to come visit and allowing access to the park from that side, we're going to see a lot more traffic coming through Seaside, coming through, think about how you get there. You come through Broadway, you come through, well, there will be a little bit more increased traffic on Hillby where I live, but so it goes. But we will see more people coming through Seaside and hopefully spending their dollars here. Or for me, spending my time here in the outdoors at Seaside instead of having to go all the way around Fort Ord National Monument in order to get into the monument and do a little biking or hiking or just enjoy the outdoors. So again, this is the big one. So this is what you might call dark yellow. Stretching all the way and providing a very long, contiguous tract of land for us to enjoy. So this is where it gets fun. So State Bill 330 requires that if we do decide not to build houses somewhere, we need to designate those dwelling units as somewhere else in the city of Seaside. It is a state bill. It's also the right thing to do. It was a really interesting exercise to do, looking at Seaside and thinking about where we might want to, what we call upzone. That is to say, add more dwelling units will increase the population density. Thought I had a map next. What we found, and hopefully I have a map next after this one, what we found is that if we were to rezone, or upzone, I guess is the correct term, Seaside East, Main Gate, a little tract of land called First and Giggling, and then not Bayonet and Black Horse, just one of them, I believe it's Black Horse. we would actually find that we have 1,010 surplus dwelling units. That is to say, by moving these dwelling units from Seaside East into the city of Seaside, into our already urbanized area, we would actually increase Seaside's ability to maintain a population just based on places to live. We'll talk about why that's awesome here in a little bit. So just a quick summary of the zoning. We have the three parts that we just went through. So we have our Greenbelt 1, remember that's up at the top of Hilby. That's going to be our outdoor sporting facilities, think ballparks, think a cricket field if that's what's in at the time. Then we have our Greenbelt 2, that's our camping area up on Eucalyptus. Again, hopefully bringing in some RVs, some campers, people who want to stick around town and frequent our restaurants. And then finally, Greenbelt 3 is going to be that very large tract of land that we're going to set aside for bike paths and outdoor recreation. Then we mentioned housing very briefly, but the net result again is 1,010 new houses if we rezone that way. And then finally, there's another provision right now in that we're considering in the draft of our document that would require a vote by the people before the city annexes new land. So a lot of that land. Not the map I wanted, but it's a map. So some of this county land up there, it would just prevent some strange urban sprawl going that way, some strange stuff being built out there without the people at Seaside giving it the thumbs up. So a couple of things about this area that I find particularly exciting. You're currently not allowed to hike there, so I actually don't know too much about it except for by looking at it from the areas where you are allowed to go and through friends of mine who do surveys back there. We mentioned that the campground, GB2, and the sporting facility, GB1, you can't really see them from the city of Seaside. They're kind of meant to be hidden back there in little pockets, which I think is a good thing. All of these little red stars that you see here are the currently existing roads in Fort Ord National Monument. So, every one of those is an access point into Fort Ord National Monument when that area becomes part of Fort Ord National Monument. What that means is that we're taking that border of Fort Ord National Monument, we are saying that the border is now part of Seaside and that we are essentially a continuation of Fort Ord National Monument and enabling more access to the monument. Also, kind of close to where those red stars are, my understanding, if you go up on General Jim Moore and you take a look at the hills behind General Jim Moore, some of those just look like they would be absolutely fantastic views up there. Great place to watch a sunset or just put a bench and do a little bit of pondering. I think I mentioned this one already. So here's where I think this is a good idea, and I hope that you guys can agree on me on a couple of these points. First and foremost, I think that it's going to do wonders for the health and well-being of the Seaside community by just giving us a place to go outside and whether it's explore the trails, ride our bikes, or a place for our children to play soccer, baseball, whatever that sport might be that is the hot sport of the year. It's going to give us a fantastic place to do that. And everybody knows that getting outside and doing a little bit of sports or activity is just really good for you. It's a great way to de-stress. I'd love to have that closer here to Seaside. 2, I think I covered already, but yeah, just more recreational opportunities. 3, if anybody has ever been to Toro Park on a Saturday or Sunday, you kind of know what I'm getting at when I say facilitating social gatherings and activities. So that Greenbelt 1 area that we have potentially zoned for for sports and whatnot. Also has picnic areas in there. We'd love to see some of that Toro Park activity come to Seaside. Large family gatherings, large social gatherings, people at the barbecue in a big outdoor space. I think that'd be a wonderful thing to see more often around here. Increasing tourism, we've covered that a little bit, but basically the outdoors is an incredibly lucrative sport. People travel all over the world to go to the rest of the world. But I do know that in Fort Ord National Monument, we are becoming a major outdoor recreation destination, especially for cycling. I have a lot of friends who are into cycling, gravel, single track and whatnot. They love it here. And bikers spend money. So number 5 talks a little bit more about increasing social justice. So when I think about social justice, I think about who owns the land of Seaside East. If we take this land and we set it off and we say, let's not develop this for a little while, we're also kind of saying that we'd like to keep this land for the people of Seaside, right? And this is for us to go enjoy. These are ball fields for us to go enjoy. These are trails and biking trails for us to go enjoy. I want to go camping. I'm going to go camping at Seaside. I don't feel like driving all the way to Big Sur this week. Traffic. So, yeah. Looking at the commercial mixed-use housing, I believe that the infill that we would hopefully plan for the city of Seaside would revitalize our urban core and also provide the kinds of first homes and maybe apartments that new homeowners could move into and actually afford, more so than if we were to build housing at the top of the hill. Number 8 is kind of in that same vein, which is encouraging efficient use of city lands in order to reduce infrastructure, right? So if we focus on the roads in Seaside instead of focusing on building new roads in former Fort Ord, we'll hopefully be able to maintain our roads more efficiently than if we were maintaining and building more roads on top of that. The Monterey Down scenario, which had an annexation component to it, is kind of what fueled that annexation clause in our draft of the agenda. And finally, and this, I had to throw this in there, it protects critical habitat. That land that can be developed on the coast is, I think everybody in this room would agree, some of the most valuable land left in California. But it's also very valuable from an environmental perspective as well. So why vote on it? What we're hoping is that the citizens of Seaside will get behind this initiative, decide that this is a good idea, and that this initiative will give our city just a clear path forward for practical developments throughout the city. It would help us achieve our housing goals. Remember that 1,000+ unit surplus if we were to infill in Seaside. And finally, as I mentioned before, this would give recreational opportunities to residents and visitors. We also want the citizens of Seaside to be proactive in determining the future of Seaside East. I can see just by the turnout in this room that won't be an issue, but hopefully you guys can agree on some of the points I'm presenting tonight. So currently, based on this zoning map from 2006, we can kind of see what the current path is for Seaside East. Right now it's basically looking at low density housing for a large majority of it. A little bit of high density housing. And then actually quite a lot of good land that's set aside. Some of my favorites over here are the coastal oak woodlands, which are green. So that's really good to see. Here's another model, one in which involves developing that area and then also potentially putting a trade and exposition center district across from the golf course up there. So again, these are other alternatives that we're looking at, well, that are being looked at by Seaside. We do have an example locally of a seaside, or of a greenbelt that was passed and actually had a very positive impact on their community. And that's Marina, back in 2000. They're actually looking at voting on it again in 2020. One of the things that it did, the first red arrow up here, they designated that an urban growth boundary, so they couldn't build into that area. Instead, what they did was they actually focused on infill, actually building in areas of their city that really needed it. And as we know down there, that's where we have our Kohl's movie theater, new housing, new apartments. So you can see right there, I'm sure we've all been there in the past couple of weeks. They have a bunch of great stores and whatnot. But what it used to look like didn't make it in my presentation. Hopefully there are some folks here that do remember what it used to look like. But it was old Fort Ord Blight that was torn down to make that new development there. So we're hoping that this infill, again, going back to one of my points that I made earlier, we're hoping that this infill actually makes it a little bit easier for the city to maintain our infrastructure than if we were to expand outward and expand the footprint of the city. Just geographically, in theory, it's easier to take care of a smaller area than a much larger area. And we're hoping that by really associating Seaside strongly with the Fort Ord National Monument, we're able to really attract tourism again and revenue that could benefit us economically. And I don't think that should be shortchanged. I think that we will see significant revenue from being associated with the National Monument. So what's next? What's next is right now. Here I am standing in front of everybody here, soliciting your input and trying to figure out how much support we have for this initiative. That's going to kind of gauge where we move forward and how we move forward. We're not, we're not in this room going to make some decision on how it's going to be and how we move forward tonight. But I do want to hear what people think of this idea. Enough said. We are currently drafting an initiative. So this presentation, as you know, is clearly based on a lot of thought. So we do have an initiative drafted, and we're working on that. And again, we'll see how it goes, but if things go well, and if we do have a lot of community support for this initiative, we could finalize it and hopefully be looking for signatures for the petition by early March and get it on the November 2020 ballot. That's a very fast timeline, but we'll see if it goes well. Things you can do. I love seeing people talk about stuff like this. That's how democracy works. Please talk with friends and neighbors about the initiative. Bounce ideas back and forth on each other. Whether you agree or disagree, I think that's how we decide whether or not this is a good idea. Please share feedback with us. I'm going to work on some centralized communication method, I don't have it yet, that people can start talking to us a little bit more readily. And if you agree and you want to help us make this happen, volunteer to gather signatures and talk on doors, talk to neighbors about it and see if anybody will back this. See if we have enough backing to push this forward. Or I'll come present at your house if this wasn't exciting enough already. And of course, if we get it on the November ballot, please vote.
Sir, question.
So here's our summary right here. Again, we've been over this 3 times, and this is where I'm going to leave you guys.
Yeah, question if I may.
Tell them who you are.
Pat, my name's Jim Voss, and I run the Seaside Chamber of Commerce. Have you brought this idea to the city council in Seaside? Have you addressed them at all?
I personally have not,
Well,
but I know that it has been talked with, would you say?
well, I'm trying to figure out, because here's the thing that I have a problem with. And the problem is when, if I may, some outsiders come in to tell Seaside what they should do and use an initiative to try to, and with money that your organization or organizations might have to win some vote, rather than be honest and come forward to the city council. So I have a problem with that. Do you live in Seaside?
I do.
You do, okay. But I understand the gentleman that runs Land Watch, which is part of it, he does not.
That's correct.
And a lot of the people from Land Watch do not live in Seaside, is that correct?
That is correct, but I would counter, if you don't mind, just by saying that. I totally agree. I don't want other people coming in and telling me how to run my community and run my neighborhood. I think that's a very solid point. I'll also say that I'm not adept at politics. I just think this is a good idea. But that being said, thinking that this is a good idea and even being in Seaside, the people who got together to form this idea into something a little bit more, we were just meeting around kitchen tables, and we were mostly from Seaside. We did seek outside help. There's no way that I could write an initiative by myself, and I love my colleagues who helped form this idea, that we could even probably come out with something like
And
this.
if I may, what's in it for Seaside?
Oh,
Yeah, where does this idea with this land that eventually are to be given to us, to Seaside, to do all this other stuff, the camping and everything, how does that advance our revenues for Seaside, which we need dearly? I got to be honest with you, I don't need to go camping outside.
I understand that point. What I'd like to do is take a little bit more time and dive into that. I'd love to talk about that afterwards, but I do think that you have a good point. I'd love to see, because I've been told that tourism brings revenue, and if we have something that people want to come see, that's going to hopefully turn into sales tax for us. Will that sales tax equal property tax that we would get from building homes up there? I would hope so, but I would love to discuss that further. Thank you for your comment.
Questions, sir?
Oh, yeah, I'm Tom Mancini. Listen, I've been on the floor board for a few years. Seaside only has 870 developable acres. You're wiping out, let's see, 43, 13, 99, and there's 674 acres from disappear into sunset. I mean, you can say put campgrounds out there, but the state's putting in a new campground along the dunes. I don't know that those 8 access roads can get into the national park, because 90% of that land on the other side of Seaside is range area. So I think you need to find out what lands you can or can't get into. Because I sure as hell, I'm not on the city council now, but if I was, I sure as hell wouldn't annex anything on the other side of General Moore that I couldn't, that's marked off for the ranges. I was a little upset with your opening statement on the first page. You stated that you are a community-sponsored initiative. You're speaking for yourself, you're not speaking for the community. I just want to let you know, start it off. Next.
Thank you for your comments.
Tom, I know there's a lot of concern amongst a certain number of our citizens in terms of development, moving towards a business model where we are going to bring in business income, find jobs for people. There's concern about that. How are you addressing that in your plan here in terms of the infill areas? What are you doing in terms of cost benefit? Will you be doing an analysis cost benefit wise in terms of projected possibilities for business income and jobs related to what you're talking about? Because I know you're talking about a recreational aspect of this and a greenway, which is a beautiful asset that we have. value that. But we also know that there's a huge need here for economic development. And so how will you present your plan so that those infill areas are presented in a way that actually evaluates the cost benefit and what kind of benefit that these people were talking about economically? How are you going to do some hard homework to do some of that evaluation?
I think that's a great question. Right now, we have left it pretty open in terms of the concept. As commercial mixed use, it would, in theory, allow housing next to, well, I'm blanking on the word, but areas for business and retail, et cetera, all mixed together. But you're right, to actually get the numbers on that, we would have to potentially run a couple of scenarios and figure out what that looked like on this particular
I just
day.
think people want more information to be able to actually judge that.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. I think you did a very good job. Second of all, personally, I'm here to learn. And I go to all these. Third, you mentioned Monterey Downs a couple of times. So the question I voted against Monterey Downs for a wide range of reasons. When they promised us parks, and there was no parks and no bathrooms. Then they promised swimming pool without a swimming pool. Then they promised tourists without events of that size magnitude they were promising. And there was countless reasons. But you're saying there's going to be ball fields, there's going to be camping grounds, he said there's going to be hiking trails, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic here. But in order to do something, it costs money. Does that mean Sustainable Seaside or Landmark is going to build it for the city of Seaside? Because it's going to cost money to maintain the habitat. So I'm just trying to learn, and I'm not trying to be critical. I just say, in order to do the things that you want, it costs lots of dollars. And are you guys, the groups that are hosting, are they going to build those things for the city of Seaside? Because we won't have development to do those things without Landmark or Sustainable Seaside coming out with megabucks to do that. And again, I mean that with all respect.
Of course, and it's taken as such. I would say that is a very good point, and it's something that, going back to our economic modeling, I'd like to dive into a little bit more. I really do appreciate these comments, because these are things that we do need to think about, so please keep them coming.
How do you plan to infill in a city that's already so crowded that it is socially almost unacceptable? People are crammed together, and you're saying inbuild. This city has already got 10 cars per house crammed in there.
Right.
Well, how are you going to do that? That's just words right now.
Sorry about that, but there we go. So maybe I didn't mention just where these areas are. These areas currently do not have housing on them, so there would be areas where we could potentially put more dense housing than what might already be, or what is actually already currently slated for Seaside East. So essentially the answer is build up.
But you were talking about building where we've already built. You weren't talking about anything new. You know, the propaganda I read in building meant where we've already spread, where Seaside already is.
Right, and my building up comment was not well received, so
Yeah, it's too crowded.
I will not do that. So those areas right now do not currently have any housing on them that I'm aware of, and so they would be added to the housing.
Yes, Ray Reardon. You want us to go out and get signatures and get it on the ballot. But I remember when I went and bought my house, I knew what the price of the house was. And you haven't given us any numbers to tell us what it will cost Seaside to do this. So you really can't sell it you can't sell this, I'm going to use this word, I don't know, pig in a poke. This is what this sounds like, a con, because you haven't put any prices on it. You haven't said, hey, Seaside, this is going to cost you $300,000 a year to maintain 675 acres of trail. Because over in Torrey Park, someone's maintaining that.
Right.
So, and you know what? It isn't me walking along picking up the trash. It isn't her. Someone's doing that, and it's costing someone. So before we move on, give us some numbers. Right, tonight, I mean, you've done a great presentation, like you said. Go through your computer and give us some numbers tonight. Or is that the pig in the poke?
Again, I'll be straight with you. I think this is a good idea, but I'm not an economist or anything like that.
But then why did you come here tonight to ask us to get signatures? No, hold on. He's asking us to go out and get signatures. Then why are you up on that milk carton saying, let's go out and get signatures to get on the ballot, when you don't have that, or you don't have the person to give us the numbers? Because if you said, hey, Ray, it's only $100,000 a year, build it. Because you know what, you're right, let's sustain it. But it is going to cost $100,000. You can't even put a road in for that much. So help us out here.
Absolutely. And I'd like to walk back a little bit and just say, I'm here to present this as an idea. I'm not here to say, let's go start canvassing tomorrow. Thanks for volunteering.
It's not an idea when you're saying to vote on it. It's not an idea. You were saying to go out and get signatures and let's vote. This year. It's not an idea yet then. This is for fact.
What I said was, if this is received well, I would like to see this move forward, and if it does move forward, we can see it on the November 2020 ballot. If not, and there are some really good points that were brought up tonight that need to be considered, then we may have to walk back, look at what we're proposing, and see if we can propose something better for us.
So one last thing. So you're not asking for anybody to go out and get signatures right now until you give another presentation with the numbers?
There will probably be many presentations given about this before we move forward.
I got an idea. Why don't we save some time and take a vote here?
Yeah.
So, all those that are against this, raise their hand. All right.
Keep them up, keep them up.
You're against how you present the idea is a fine idea, but you have no support for intelligent people to want to move forward.
Thank you. Sister Young?
Okay, so to follow up on all that, I think it's important that we look into the science of this. If you are in fact going to come back with a better presentation, I think it would behoove everybody in this room to consider what a green space paradox is. Hopefully in all your research you come across that, right? It's what killed San Francisco, going to an 8-to-1 building ratio. It's when you sink money into a green space without the revenue necessary to protect the native flora and fauna and protect trails, which I think we all agree, hopefully in this room, that's really important. It is a beautiful area. We have amazing flora and fauna here, and we need to protect that from invasive species and things like that. Once that land becomes ours, that's super important. What will happen is, and let's say, even if your economy numbers are correct, which we don't have numbers yet, but let's say even that happens, the tax is passed on to us as a city, which already is in a housing crisis. I have 3 graduate degrees, my wife has 2. We barely were able to afford to move back. But we add those taxes, property values go up. The cost of rent matches that and goes up. And what happens is, this room of people you're talking to does not look like us anymore. It looks like you. And Seaside is one of the most diverse communities in the peninsula. I am for protecting the environment. Being sustainable is incredibly vital. But you can't be sustainable in the environment without sustaining its people.
Right.
Well
Right here, sir.
I know you're a Seaside resident. You might be my neighbor. I live on here with you. I don't know. Well, anyway, I don't know when it was, a year or two ago. It seemed like I was in a room over here, and they had all these maps out about the same developing of the same zone, and it seemed pretty cool to me because they were having, it was mixed. They had the residences, which yeah, if I'm rich enough, I would love to buy one and I could see this ocean from, but I doubt that I'll be in that venue. But they also included, if I remember right, they had it in such a way that there was a parking area so everyone in Seaside would have access to the open areas and the trails, so we would have access to the National Monument, zones or whatever. So it wasn't going to be just a community that cut everybody else off. I think you showed that maybe in one of your slides. I've been all around a lot of those areas and ridden my bicycle. Didn't know where the hell I was, but it seemed like you could go all the way to the monument, going up Eucalyptus and all this kind of stuff. As a citizen, I'm really like an idea of some kind of campground. I don't know where, but I also like the idea of continuing to develop housing.
Right.
And because I know it sustains. You live on Hillby, I live on Hillby. I got a little dog I walk, but I have to be careful at night because the sidewalks are so bad and the lighting is turned off. You go up on M2, they got beautiful lights, but on Hillby you can't see where you're walking after it gets dark. That's because we have no money. Unfortunately, we have to have a balance between the two. It seemed to me from looking at that original plan that seemed to incorporate both, maintaining a nice wildlife area for us to enjoy while also attracting housing. It'll be expensive housing. You can't buy a mobile home in this town without, I don't know. It's a little crazy. But that's just, you're asking for input. That's where I'm coming from. I know we have to have something that will allow us to actually get more income coming in so we can maintain our roads. And wasn't there an issue a few years ago where they couldn't fix the pool at the high school here and stuff like that? I mean, there's just a lot of issues, and unfortunately, we do need to have some growth. And we have to get it where we can get it in balance. Nature. It seems like they were trying to do that with that original plan. Am I right, guys? Is that?
You're right.
Okay. So anyway, you're asking for perspectives. I'm trying to understand how this is better than that. I don't see it at this point. I like the idea of some sort of a campground for people, but I don't see it being a better plan than the one that was presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you had a slide up there that said something about housing costs the city more than the revenue it takes in. It was in one of your last slides about the cost of providing this fire and police and maintaining the roads. It costs the city more. It sounds like it's an economic thing for a lot of you guys. So is that true that it costs more for a city to maintain and provide services in the neighborhood than the city supposed to?
Maintenance and infrastructure. Slide 2 or 3. Somewhere in there.
Was one of the first ones?
And then the other thing was,
GB1.
like this gentleman said, oh, it's probably going to be luxury homes. Okay, so how's that going to provide jobs for you guys?
You don't know that.
Well, it's kind of ocean, so it's just, okay, mediums and high. But I'd like to hear somebody talk about how that's going to provide jobs.
All builders have a city has an ordinance where they have to have 20%. Affordable housing. Whether you're building 100 high-end homes or building 500 moderate homes, you still have to set aside 20%.
Right, but that's, okay, I can understand.
Greenbelt did that. He built 380 homes on the former Fort Ord, but then he got a complex down in the Salvation Army that has about 15 or 20, what do we call them? Low-to-moderate income people. So he met the requirement.
Right, so it's provide, so I think there was this talk about infill, and I think cities moving to the future, I mean, this is a slow-moving road. Looking ahead 20, 30 years from now, you're talking about, this isn't like tomorrow. But making cities more walkable, building like what's happened on Broadway. I think the big plan from what I saw in the past was to put apartments and housing above the retail. If that were to happen throughout the city, I think that's what he was talking about. Am I right?
Yeah,
Is that part of the infill?
Broadway itself was not, but this would be looking at 3 other areas.
Yeah, so I mean, I know these people have great questions in this, but
Are you from Seaside?
All right.
Who's these people?
well, no, I just hear we need jobs and income. Well, he's talking about campgrounds, basically like a hotel.
Do you live in Seaside?
Yeah, do you live in Seaside?
Did you write this one, Dave?
And what is your name?
I didn't know, that is, you know, I'm trying I'm posing questions to you guys. I don't know.
Let's move on to the next comment, question. I'm gonna come back to you. I haven't been paying attention to this side of the room enough.
So on the map, does the pink correspond to areas of potential infill?
Yes, that's correct. Maybe I wasn't clear, I'm sorry.
No, you were, but, so is it correct that none of the green will have developments, the Greenbelt area?
It would not be
Of housing?
of housing, correct.
Okay. So I think it would be helpful to see projections of population, because as we know, rent is high here, there's a housing shortage, and I think it would be helpful to get people on board. I like a lot of aspects of it, but rent is a difficult thing for a lot of residents here, and I think it would be good to see that if we are setting aside some great places, some great parks, some great places to watch the sun go down, it'd be nice to know that rent will not be going up disproportionately if this does go forward. It would be helpful to see those numbers.
Absolutely.
I'd like to say something. I'm a homeowner in Seaside, and I'm a big advocate of public safety. And am I not hearing right on the news? We just recruited our first police officer for $30,000. How are we going to afford more safety out there when we can't even take care of what we have? So I think this is so far, not in our lifetime, most of us that are sitting here, and it's just something that's not even possible. And I prefer not to get everybody excited for something that's really not even feasible in our lifetime, most of us
Your comment, you were heard.
I want to piggyback on what she said about the police and the crime. Is if you do the research, when you have so many people per square mile, it increases the crime rate. So what you're proposing to do is very scary to me, because we don't have the police now to take care of the problems. And so if we add more people per square mile, that'll increase our crime rate here.
And we don't know.
And we don't even, we can't protect ourselves now.
Understood. That's definitely something to think about very critically. We'll look into that. Thank you. Way back.
So just to go in that same vein of thought, there have also been a lot of studies that have been done on the benefits of green spaces in terms of helping prevent crime, not from necessarily a maybe we can have more police officers, but from a psychological benefit. So that's also something to consider, that while we are talking about preserving a green belt, which I, as a scientist, support, because once you start chipping away at your natural resources, it's like, where does it stop? But I think also it needs to be addressed of like, where are these green spaces going to be available within the city? Because there's a concern that there's not enough money to support the infrastructure, but there may not also be enough money to support parks that are here already, or parks that could be created for people in the city now.
Understood. Thank you for your comments. Ma'am?
As a more than 50-year resident of the city of Seaside, I came here as an Army wife, and when my husband and I retired here and Fort Ord closed, they promised Seaside that we would recover from the closure of Fort Ord. We have not seen that recovery. We need businesses paying taxes. We need housing, as somebody mentioned. You can't drive down these little streets in Seaside for so many cars. And we have so many homeless children living here in Seaside because we don't have enough housing. Now, there's got to be a reasonable way for the city of Seaside, before I die, I want to see something come out the ground that will help Seaside recover from the closure of Fort Ord. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sir?
Sorry, I didn't ask a question last time, and then you get to that. My big question is, you talked a lot about moving the housing around and everything else. In these areas that you plan to move to, and if you go, actually, don't worry about it. It's a lot of something. In these areas you've described, have you discussed anything with the developers, the people who may own that land? Like, there's been talk about the golf course. That's on a lease for how many years? 60 years. Thank you. Have you talked to that person about building? I mean, I feel like it's great to talk about moving around housing, but is there like an actual plan? If we try to push it on the campus town, we're finally moving forward with that. It's going to delay it with another EIR and push that back even further. So my question is really this: is Sustainable Seaside and Landwatch, which is the entity driving this, is there a chance for them to compromise with the people of Seaside? Does it have to be 0%? Can we talk about finding a way, because the environment is super important, and green space is super important, I agree with you. And studies do show, but minorities people that generally don't have access to green space. So can we compromise? Or are you guys going to stick only to the 0%?
I don't see any other way other than compromise. It's like
we have that on tape. That's good.
Mr. Mayor, this is your meeting. I'm just here listening in. But there's no compromise. This is up to the citizens of Seaside. If they get a 3,000 signatures, it's on the ballot. They don't, it's not on the ballot. But you guys as individuals don't have to compromise with any special interest group. I want to clear that up. You know, if you guys all support this, that's fine with me, wherever you guys at. But you don't discuss from a position of saying I'm already thinking we need to compromise. There's nothing to compromise on. This is your land, and if you sign for it, you sign for it. If you don't, you don't.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the clarification. My name is Kenneth Murray, resident of Seaside, not a plant. I want to say this is what you stated before about that compromise situation. Why would Landwatch, Sustainable Seaside, Keep Fort Ord Wild compromise anything for Seaside if that was any way doing? They are blocking everything from Seaside. Now there's no other way, okay? Monterey Downs didn't pan out. But they came to a city council meeting, regardless of where the city council was going to vote that night on that issue. They came, interrupted the city council meeting, and passed out court document papers that they were going to sue the city. So Seaside residents, why would we waste our time backing something like this up when we're not going to benefit from anything of this? That's just a plain truth. I wasn't here at the beginning, but I'm well aware of your groups, okay? And a lot of y'all
in that group that's trying to dictate to what Seaside can and will not do, or can't do, or will do, don't live in Seaside. So when you come to meetings of Seaside, you should just be a spectator and not a participator. And you should just listen, because what we do in Seaside is up to the residents of Seaside. And we have some long-term residents that paved the way for us, and they can't even welcome their kids or their grandkids back because of the high cost of living, because of no development. And that land that was promised by Fort Ord, all y'all got your portions, and those in Land Watch, all you guys do, and don't count out that other one. There's another one. There's another organization. That first one, I can't call it. Keep Fort Ord, but no, that's not the one. That's Sierra Club. Yeah, y'all all are extensions of that. And you don't want no development in the city of Seaside. Why you don't want no development in the city of Seaside? Because you don't want Seaside to be on top of the hill to have the best view of the Monterey Peninsula. You don't want that. I don't care what you're proposing. You don't want us to have housing, low-income housing, for people to have the best view of the whole Monterey Peninsula, because you can't get it in Monterey. You got to park on a wharf to see across the bay. You can't get it in PG. I grew up in PG. You got to park along the water to see across the bay. But if you go up to the top of the hill, you can look at everything across Monterey Bay from the city of Seaside.
Eloquent as always, Sue Hawthorne, resident of Seaside, and what we're proposing is, rather than lock that land up in the hands of a few people who can afford luxury houses, that land is available to all of the citizens of Seaside who can go up there and look at the water anytime they want. Just a thought.
Housing.
I think what we're talking about here is alternatives, and I don't see good alternatives on either side. I hear alternatives about building low-income housing, but I hear 300 homes are built and 10 or 15 are low-income. That's not going to solve the problem.
Well, it's a separate area.
That doesn't matter. We're talking about ratios here, right? If you want to build low-income housing, where are you going to get the money to do that? I would love to see low-income housing up on the top of the hill and give those people a chance to see that sort of view. I'd like to be up there. I probably qualify. But you know what? Where's the money going to come from? It's not going to come from some businesses in Seaside, or we can have that kind of money already.
Where's the money going to come from to maintain all this?
Exactly.
No. You're 675 acres. Where's that money coming from?
If you don't do anything with it, it doesn't cost much. If you start wait a second, listen to what I have to say. If you build infrastructure, it costs. I would like to see the road in front of my house. I live in Seaside. I've lived here for a long time. I'd like to see it better maintained. So you're talking about building more housing, and you can't maintain the housing that you got. The question I have is, what are we going to do with that land? Here's one proposal. What are we going to do? What this is generating, I think, is a good thing, is a discussion. What are we going to do with it? I would love to see a lot more low-income housing in Seaside. I don't know how somebody who's new here buys a house. You know, the gentleman was saying he has an advanced degree, his wife has an advanced degree, and they can barely afford a house. Let's build low-income housing up there, and let's let everybody go up there and have that view. But how are we going to do it? If you can't maintain the infrastructure that you have, how are you going to maintain the infrastructure up there, whether it's camping or whether it's housing?
Let's talk about that.
We have a college here.
We do.
But when you graduate, where do you go? Because you don't have the job and the business to support the education that they go someplace else.
And that's an important thing. What kind of jobs are we going to have that college graduates will come to?
If we don't have businesses that hire them.
What kind of business? That's exactly right. Out in Rita, they just got this $500 million investment into Joby, which is bringing in people who have college degrees. So if you get a college degree and you look around, you're like, where am I going to work?
You've got to have those kinds of businesses. Is that the kind of businesses you're attracting? Is that what you're talking about building up there?
Yes. That's it.
Producing income to build those homes.
If you just build homes, that's not, you see what I'm saying? So I think what we started here is a discussion. This is a really good thing. We need to all get together, all the people who live in Seaside, together, and say, what are we going to do with that land? How are we going to provide low-income housing? I haven't seen it in Seaside since I've lived here, and I've lived here nearly 30 years. You know, I got my house here because the fort closed. Bad for some people, good for some of us that could barely afford a house, scrape up a down payment, and I'm still working on that fixer-upper.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Maybe to be helpful. I believe towards the end of April, early May, mid-May, the city is going to do a charrette that kind of like they did for Campus Town, where the community had ideas that put forth into a development that creates open space, housing, and all that unit. That's coming out towards the middle of April, end of April, thereabouts, early May. So the residents of Seaside can have input in what they want into that area, so that way the consultant could put together a plan that meets the needs of the residents. So by participating in the charrette, the residents will be empowered to do what they feel is best for the city of Seaside. And so I think that's what you're talking about.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Let's all get involved in the charrette.
So get involved with the charrette.
Exactly.
Be directly involved, Seaside residents, and be involved in that and create your own village like they did for the most part at Campus Town. And that's the way you create a development that works for all the people, be it the income and be the park preservation, etc. It can be done.
If I could jump off that a little bit, that gives our city council or our city management direction so that they can go out and look for those kinds of businesses that will in fact support people with graduate degrees or college degrees or whatever. But they need to get the direction from the people in Seaside. And so I appreciate your coming here and starting this conversation, giving us one alternative. But now we have this grant coming. Perfect. Let's take all this energy that's in this room, right, and go to that charrette and talk about what it is we want for Seaside.
Right.
Because I can see everybody cares about Seaside. I do. I love my town.
I do.
Same here. Thank you so much, both of you, for your comments.
Would you mind putting the map of Marina up there again, and I'll be glad to tell you, the newcomer to Seaside, what the difference between the two properties are. Had another one with the empty areas. Oh, that's good enough. Okay, down on the bottom, right there where that arrow was, with barracks. No trees, nice cement sidewalks and everything else, you know, and barracks. Where the VA DOD hospital is across the street, you don't have it on that.
Down there somewhere?
With warehouses, cement warehouses. Where the shopping center is, same thing, barracks. So you have two different types of properties. If you stood on if you could put a ladder, a fire truck ladder on the top at the middle of General Moore Blvd and the main gate, and you look that way, all you would see was barracks. Then you make a U-turn, oh my God, 15 cement buildings right in the middle of Seaside. And a range that there's nobody can build on. So that's where the 850 acres is all we had. And you're saying taking 675 of them and not letting them choose them. Danny Bakelow's getting 90. You got how many at the main gate, I can't remember. But you got about 100 acres at the main gate, Danny and a couple others, about 170 acres at the main gate. What are we going to do with the other 675? And by the way, every developer has to provide a habitat management plan. So you're talking about protecting the habitat, that automatically gets done when the development is done. So you might want to think about the other issues that have to take place before you go break any ground. By the way, when Copeland Grove built those houses over there, 1,000 people went to the city, went down to the Embassy Suites over a 1-year period and signed letters of intent to buy. When they built those 8 demos, they had about 500 people the first day and 500 people the second day. So the thing was, and most of them who bought those homes lived on the Monterey Peninsula or worked for Monterey County and were selling homes in PG and Monterey for over $800,000 and buying homes over here for $450,000. Amen.
That's why we need the development that's low cost.
The people who bought the houses,
the
people who bought the houses over here in Seaside Highlands jacked the prices up themselves.
They did, I agree.
They started at $250 one day, and you want a piece of property over here, and he wants that same house.
So how do we prevent that from happening in Seaside East?
I don't know.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying.
Somebody made a comment, no house.
If we could break for a second for the mayor to comment.
I just want to, I'm just here listening, right? So but what I'm saying is, this is a presentation on this serious issue that they're presenting to you as residents. I would think it would be helpful for all of us if we focus the questions on what they're asking you to do instead of trying to figure this thing out among ourselves. They're presenting you something, and we should be asking them questions so we can all get a better understanding. That's my only point. I think you guys presented something that you want the residents to hear about, and they should be asking questions, because 9 o'clock will come faster than you know it, and then the next meeting you may have something else you have to do. You can't be at the next meeting. So I'm respecting their time. Let's not talk among ourselves. Let's ask them about their initiative.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do want to point out that you guys are asking very good questions. I might not have all the answers to them, and I apologize for that, but I am intending to look into these. So thank you so much for all your comments. Sir.
So I'm kind of confused on who's backing you up in this. These 3 groups we keep on talking about. I mean, are we talking about lawyers that can write these up and get this on the ballot? Or these plumbers that you got going for you? Or what do we got going? Because as we start looking at chipping in money to fight this, I mean, who are we talking about? I mean, if we're talking about big money like Bloomberg coming in here, because see, yeah, he's busy. Because you stand up there and you keep on saying, we'll look into this, or that's a great idea. But you're not saying anything for us to hold your tongue to. And so, I would like to hear who we're talking about.
So right now we are currently Sustainable Seaside sponsoring this presentation. We are Land Watch Monterey County. We are Fort Ord National is also involved. What I would hope to see is that there are other groups who are interested in getting involved and helping us shape this into something that the community of Seaside would appreciate.
But you're okay with outsiders coming into your home and doing this? That's what I don't understand.
I can't do this myself. There's no other way.
But you haven't asked anybody else to get involved.
This is the
first meeting that, and I really, my name is Betty Luskin. I've been on this peninsula for 49 years.
Amen.
I've been in the school systems and what have you. And I'm kind of really a novice in this. This is my first real involvement in the politics, I call it, of Seaside. I'm in the educational politics arena. And I really don't like surprises. There are issues on this peninsula that are taking place, in fact, housing for teachers who we can't even keep in our school district because they can't live on the peninsula. We got some very serious issues here. And surprise meetings and all of this is not something we should be really doing. We need to communicate. We're intelligent people in this city, and we know how to work together. And I'm not one to really speak in public until I know all the facts, and there are a lot of facts that have not been presented tonight. There's not the research there's research that should have been done, information that should have been brought to us. A presentation, you've shown it here, but we should have something in our hands to follow along with you. Transparency is critical. Trust is critical. And this is not the way that you build trust to move us forward as a community. I want to work with all that are interested in meeting the needs of our citizens and our children. We have declining enrollment in MPUSD. We need to bring families into this community in order to maintain a school district that will give our kids a world-class education. There's so many issues that we should be discussing, and all of us should be working together to meet the needs of this community. And there is no togetherness in this room tonight. No. There are people telling us what we need to do, how we need to do it. And I'm just not one that's going to sit and follow suit. I'm just not going to do it. I was raised by a father who had a 3rd grade education and a mother who had a 7th grade in a little 200 folks country town in Arkansas. And they told me when I got an education that I had to pay it forward. And that's what I've done. I got grandchildren and children in this community that can't afford to live here. We need homes. We need first, a way to provide homes for these people, for our legacy. Okay? And not a small special interest groups cannot dictate the future of this community.
Understood.
Okay, my name is Alice Jordan, and I am a Seaside resident. But what I'm hearing tonight is that you have an assignment, and your assignment is to go back and tell us the cost of doing business. This is how much it's going to cost, and to bring us another option.
Yes.
Is that what you're hearing?
That's what I'm hearing. I hear that I have a lot of homework to do on this. I apologize if this comes as a surprise to you. It's not my intention.
And that's someone who specializes in business, not me. I'm not your friend. But if you can bring this kind of information to a city that's holding that kind of property, the value of that property, we need someone who specializes in the cost of what you propose and other options.
And also the highest and best use.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you. We've definitely been heard, and everybody else who has mentioned the economic impacts of this. It's something that definitely is looking into. Thank you. Ma'am?
I just want to say one more thing. I think we all need to work together to make our city the very best city that it can be, that takes care of our people and our children. And I think part of that is nature. I'm a therapist. There's so much research now out that talks about our lack of connection with our land is hurting us physically, blood pressure, tension, stress, all of it. We need nature to help balance our hyper-urban living. And so we really do need to have a balanced approach. A balanced approach, that's all I'm saying. To have the best city that we can be. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I should add the cost of doing business or the cost of not doing business.
Do you care to elaborate on that?
Pardon me?
Do you care to elaborate on that?
Yes, if we just decide to leave it green as is, who's paying the cost for leaving it as is versus bringing in revenue?
Opportunity cost.
Understood. Thank you. Ma'am?
So when is the next meeting?
That's a great question. It won't be next week for me. But I don't know if we can set the next meeting tonight right here without looking at the calendar, but well, I'm sure we'll circulate in the same circles when we do our next presentation.
Well, I left my email, and I would appreciate knowing in advance so that I can calendar it. Will this be presented at the city council meeting? I'm just asking, you know.
I don't know what my next steps are exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, please. Does anybody else have anything else to say? Oh, man. So everybody, again, I want to thank you so much for coming out, for listening to my presentation. I hope everybody will think that hard. I know I have a lot of things to think of. Thank you.